Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed for another Q&A session right here from Taipei. We're covering Computex 2025, of course, and we've got a bunch of great questions from you, but this is part 2. So part 1's up on the channel now, more great questions to go through, so let's get into it. But before we do, our Computex coverage is brought to you by MSI's excellent QD-OLED gaming monitors. Offering perfect blacks, infinite contrast, and lightning-fast response times, MSI QD-OLED monitors are the best way to level up your gaming experience. And there are options for everyone, whether you're after an incredible 4K panel or a blistering 500Hz refresh rate, all with the latest features like True HDR, a custom graphene film to cool the display, and HDMI 2.1 with full console support. Check the links below to learn more about MSI's QD-OLEDs.
Also supporting our Computex trip this year is Thermal Grizzly and their Duranaut high-performance thermal paste, offering extreme long-term stability combined with outstanding thermal conductivity. It's not electrically conductive and won't harden over time. So for more information, please check the links in the video description.
All right, Steve, which 50 series cards are most in need of a super refresh?
Oh, the RTX 5090, would you agree?
Yeah, because when I'm thinking, I've just spent $2,000, but really more like $3,000 on my GPU, I was immediately thinking within the year I'd like to spend more. I'd like to give NVIDIA maybe $4,000 or even $5,000. So
that'd be good.
Even if it's 5% faster, I'm obviously willing to spend at least $2,000 more on my card.
That's a generational improvement at this point.
Well, from the laptop side of things, it genuinely is a generational improvement now. Shout out to Jared, watch his video on that.
No, I think probably the one that's in most need of a refresh would be the RTX 5070.
Yeah. 12
gigabytes of VRAM on a relatively expensive card. It's borderline at this point in time if you're going to keep that card again, which is why we didn't really want to recommend it, because I feel like those recommendations will age pretty poorly. A couple of years from now, you're really going to be struggling with that sort of GPU to enable like a reasonable degree of ray tracing with frame generation if you want that. And then if there's any sort of AI-based stuff that we've heard that eats into VRAM as well. I'm not sure if that's going to happen within the lifespan of this card. But anyway, in a lot of examples, it's right on the edge or insufficient with 12 gigabytes. So I think boosting up the VRAM capacity on that card would be the way to go. And I think if that card had 16 gigabytes, it would be a product we would be recommending or could recommend.
Yeah, I think it'd actually be a really great product. Just having
the price is good now.
Yeah, it's available at the MSRP.
I think the price wouldn't be nearly as good if it did have.
That's right. Yeah, it'd be more expensive.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's the card I would pick to refresh for sure.
Yeah, I think the second card that comes to mind is that, a 5080 Super, but not the 5080 Super that we're hearing is the rumored model, because the rumors are currently suggesting that the 5080 Super will be essentially the same as the 5080, so the same maxed out GB103 silicon, but with more VRAM, 24 gig instead of 16 gig, which is like fine, okay. It's obviously a better product with more VRAM. But what I would be angling for is closing the huge gap between the 5080 and 5090. The performance gap there is far too large. There's obviously room for a product there. So for me, a 5080 Super should be a cut down version of the 5090. So using the higher silicon and just making it like we've seen from those cards in the past, almost like a 5080 Ti sort of product.
So you'd still be angling for like 24 gigabytes of VRAM, but just more performance as well.
More performance. I think we won't see that product because NVIDIA are also making Pro GPUs, and there are cut down GB102s being put into Pro GPUs, like the RTX, whatever they're called. They sell for insane amounts of money, $5,000, $6,000 for cut down versions. So I would expect that card probably won't exist, and instead that silicon will be used still for the Pro market. But that would be my ideal like 5080 Super refresh. And I think that would be a really compelling product, and they could even, dare I say it, make it more expensive, because there's such a large gap there that they could sell a $1,200 5080 Super that was a decent amount faster than the existing 5080, more VRAM. I think that would be compelling. So there's that, and obviously will we get a 5060 Super that has fixed VRAM? I doubt it. So probably not even worth talking about that one. Okay, so this isn't a question, but it is definitely a question that we'll be answering. Please mention that AMD Frank Azor's tone-deaf 8GB and MSRP statements are unacceptable. So let me read out what Frank Azor replied to a random person, maybe it was another media outlet on Twitter/X. So out of the blue, he responds with this comment. Majority of gamers are still playing at 1080p and have no use for more than 8 GB of memory. Most played games worldwide are mostly esports games. We wouldn't build it if there wasn't a market for it. If 8GB isn't right for you, then there's 16GB. Same GPU, no compromise, just memory options. So there's a lot to say here about this.
Where would you like to start with this?
I would like to start by saying, firstly, that this comment didn't need to be made at all.
Okay.
And I think this is an issue that we've seen with AMD's marketing over the years, that, there's been improvements, so give them credit where it's due. But I think they have run into issues previously where they've made unnecessary statements that just muddy the waters and make people upset and annoyed. And I think this is one of those comments. This wasn't Frank coming out and making just a tweet on his own account, like an original tweet or whatever. This was a reply to someone that didn't tag him, didn't tag AMD. He must have just been browsing Twitter, saw that, and was like, that's the comment I'll respond to. Just unnecessary, stupid. I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, so I quoted that tweet. Now, the problem is we're talking about a 9060 XT, and that's the product name, but there are 8 and 16GB versions. And we can talk about that a bit more as well, because there have been, popular GPUs that we've had really no issue with. RX 580, for example, there was 4 and 8GB versions of that card. Some of them, the 4GB version came first and the 8GB version came later. Some of them they released simultaneously. In those examples, at the time of release, the 4GB version, so the lower capacity version, actually represented better value, because there was basically next to no examples you could point to where the 4GB version in that example was insufficient. So it played all the games, it looked like that was going to be fine for years to come, and that was certainly the case. The 8GB was, I think all reviewers spoke to the 8GB version as being more future-proofing.
Yeah.
It was the future-proofing angle. If you wanted to spend the extra money in the hope that sometime down the track that would prove to be a better purchase, then fine. But the 4GB card worked. There were really no examples where it didn't work, and so it was fine. Fast forward today, we have 8 and 16. There are loads of examples, and they seem to be growing by the week really with every new release that comes out, where 8GB at the very least is heavily compromised. Some examples it's very broken, but it's heavily compromised, and this is at the launch of the product. Presumably you'll be keeping this thing for a minimum of 2 years. Likely, when we hear from you guys, it's like 4 or 5 years a lot of you want to keep it for. So that's a big problem because they share the same name. If there was a 9060 8GB like there is an RTX 5060 8GB, not ideal, but less of an issue. Then that just comes down to the pricing and the performance of the card and do we recommend it. But so you've got two products there, it's very misleading, and we already know the intention. The intention is to screw over consumers, essentially. So they want to, just as we talked about the 5060 Ti, they want to be able to pitch or sell these cards to system integrators, so all their partners, Dell, HP, those guys, and they can advertise that they're selling these really great value gaming systems with 9060 XTs in them. Except when you check the fine print, it's the 8GB models, not the 16GB models. So this is stuff we've again talked about at length, and Frank knows this is what they're doing. Like, they're releasing these cards to take advantage of consumers. This is essentially an anti-consumer part. If we were talking about a 16GB base model with a 32GB future-proof option, then the conversation's entirely different, because the part you're buying now works perfectly fine under all scenarios. You never have to worry about VRAM, and that is likely going to be true for the next 2, 3, 4 years. But that's not the case. So I hate it when people try to confuse the 4 and 8GB versions that we've seen previously, where the 4GB cards were perfectly fine, and now this is just the same thing. Like, why are you upset? It's not dodgy at all, but we've been, the 8GB thing's been drawn out for so long that it is in no way the same situation. And on top of that, it's not like a $200 product. It's not less than $200. It's still a $300 US product. That is a lot of money to spend on a GPU that can only play Valorant or Fortnite using specific competitive quality settings. Because I like Fortnite at competitive quality settings, that's how I recommend you should play the game. But loads of you are like, I like to turn everything up to epic because the game's beautiful and I just enjoy playing the game that way. So just because you're an esports gamer doesn't mean your keyboard's on a 45-degree angle on your desk, you've got all your binds dialed in, and you play like you're trying to go to some world championship.
Yep.
A lot of people like playing those games with their friends, and they just like playing it casually because they enjoy the way games like Valorant or Counter-Strike or whatever play, and they want to crank it up. I think in the case of Counter-Strike, doesn't really matter what you crank it up to, but they play other games as well, but that's just a silly angle to take.
There's just so many poor angles to this. Like the esports thing we've talked about in the past as well. What if there's a future esport game in the next couple of years that's really popular that uses more than 8 gigabytes of VRAM? You're just closing off your options by buying the compromised product right now that we know doesn't work in some games. And on top of that, plenty of esports gamers, while they majority of the time will play the games we've been talking about, may want to dabble in the latest and greatest single player title, especially major popular releases like on the scale of like a Cyberpunk. GTA 6 will be coming up within the next few years on PC, I would imagine. So those sort of launches tend to get a very broad gaming audience playing, even people that would normally play those games. So from that perspective, it's bad. The one question I think gamers at large should be asking when it comes to this discussion is, why do the two products have the same name? And I think it goes back to things like, having options for gamers is fine. Like, we're not advocating for there suddenly to be no affordable GPUs. Like, we just want to delete the 8 gig cards and have the entry point for gaming now being $350 instead of $300 or $250 or whatever the price point is.
Which is the opposite of what we've been saying, but anyway.
It's the opposite of what we've been saying, but we're not advocating that gaming should get more expensive and only have 16 gigabyte cards. Options are fine. And I think the reasons Frank has said about, some gamers may make the value call that they will know that they're only playing Valorant or whatever. They definitely don't need to spend the extra $50. All fine. Have a model for those people, no problems. What you have to ask beyond that point is, so then why do they both have the same name? Why isn't the esports model, the 8 gigabyte card that you're selling directly to those markets, why isn't that called something else? And this is knowing full well that, as you've said, AIBs and a lot of retailers as well do not make it clear that the 9060 XT is coming in an 8 or 16 gig model. So in that situation, if you're a company that really wants to advertise to your consumers, you don't want to mislead them, you want to make sure they're getting the products they're after, you want to make sure the esports gamer is getting the esports card and the single player gamer is getting the single player card, you wouldn't call them both the 9060 XT. It's just that simple. And I know AMD, in fact, their reasoning, their official reason is that they both have the same GPU. It's the same core count, same clock speed, same power target on the GPU. It's the same GPU. So their reasoning is they're both the same. We're just giving people options. That is just a fully arbitrary decision and line to be made here. And I think if it comes down to accuracy of naming of the products versus the potential to mislead, you should always avoid the misleading angle. Like, yes, it's accurate to say that both 9060 XTs have the same GPU and have different memory configurations, therefore they can be called the same thing. But if that has any potential to mislead customers, the first port of call should be, let's not do that. Let's make sure that the lower model, the esports, even if they called it something like the 9060E, for esports, or just something else, so that AIBs couldn't get away with having it listed as a 9060.
Defeats the entire purpose of what they're doing, so that's why they're not going to do that.
That's the thing though, is that they're making this out to be, this is the reason. Mm-hmm. They're kind of saying like, guys, we're just giving people options. Like, you can go onto the free market and buy whatever product you want. It's all good, guys. Like, but the problem is like the misleading angle that you said, and I think it goes beyond that, because a lot of retailers, it can be very difficult to see in the product name 8 gigabyte versus 16 gigabyte. We were even seeing with some of the models that it wasn't listed as like XFX 9060 XT 16 gigabyte gaming model or whatever. It's like the XFX 9060 XT gaming superfan OC with 8 gigabytes. And by the time you've seen the 8 gigabyte, like, the name is completely cut off from the product page you're looking at.
Usually it's like 8G as well. Some of the bad quotes around this as well, Frank sort of saying this and other people who have been defending it, that look, if you're playing at 1080p, 8 gigabytes is fine, you don't need more. And even people who are attacking reviews and stuff saying, these entry-level budget cards, people just want 1080p medium, which, again, you can argue about that as well. But even those comments, they're going to age so poorly. Like, you don't want to be the person claiming that in 2025, because come back in a few years from now, they're just going to age so badly. You just don't want to be trying to defend them on that angle. I don't know why gamers or people would be. And again, I think it's because people think, and I've seen the claim that, you know, we or other YouTubers who are saying this stuff are out of touch with budget gamers. We don't understand their budget constraints and all that sort of stuff, which is not a valid point to bring up, because we're not saying delete the 8GB model and then make the GPU start at $400. We're saying VRAM doesn't cost that much, guys. You can offer a 16GB card at $300. And if you can't do it with a 9060 XT GPU, do it with a 9060 GPU.
Yeah.
Like, we're advocating for budget gamers, those of you on a tight budget, to be getting better products, which has many knock-on effects that benefit you. Games improve in level of detail, texture quality improves. We see this huge shift in terms of game quality, and you don't have to, every time you get a new game, whether it's, you know, Spider-Man 2 or whatever, spend God knows how much time trying to work out what settings you can actually play the game at. Because I think we saw that game dialing down the quality preset 1 or 2 levels at 1080p on an 8GB card. It's still horrific. So that's not, and you don't want to be having to use performance mode upscaling at 1080p to justify your 8GB frame buffer.
And it's a $300 card. Like, guys, let's get real here. Like, since when are 1080p medium settings acceptable on a modern released $300 GPU? Like, people are upgrading to play the latest games at better quality settings. I'm sure that most people right now, if they have a PC, have a card that can do 1080p medium settings in games, especially if you're saying performance mode upscaling. Like, that is not a high bar to clear. Most GPUs can do that. And so I just think that those angles are ridiculous. Like, we can't just keep shifting the goalposts high, like lower and lower, and making it more and more acceptable that these entry-level cards are just like the absolute trashiest tier things. And $300 is still a boatload of money to spend. Like, if we're doing console comparisons, this is the thing that really gets me bad, is $300 is like 70+% the cost of a PlayStation 5, like, for the whole console. And the whole console, which by the way has 16 gigabytes of memory, is probably more powerful because it's got extra memory. It's just and
there'll be another generation coming out.
It comes with a controller. It comes with, you can play games straight out of the box on just that. And you're saying, like, entry-level PC gaming where you have to spend at least another $300+ just to get the rest of the components, that we should suddenly be expecting that when you spend an entry-level amount on a gaming PC, that's a worse experience than a much cheaper console? Like, what are we even doing here? Like, that's never been acceptable.
And again, like, getting back to what we're saying, justifying the existence of these 8GB cards and the fact that they appear popular with gamers, I really, really hate the argument that, 8GB 5060s, and we've seen previously with 4060s and all those cards, they're popular though. So they're saying that the market has spoken. Gamers want 8GB cards. They've previously been the most popular models, and they'll continue to be the most popular models. Therefore, people don't want to pay for a 16GB 9060 XT. They want the 8GB version. And it's such a bad way of looking at it, because you're simply saying these people were given no choice, therefore they bought that thing, and that is the best thing for them. Mm-hmm. It's like, I just don't understand that logic at all. Of course, 8GB cards are popular because all the cheapest models are 8GB. But that doesn't mean that gamers want to be limited to 8GB of VRAM. It just means that that was the cheapest option available to them. And again, if you give them a 16GB version and an 8GB version as an option, but the 8GB model's cheaper, and they need to spend as little money as possible, they will buy that version. Though I think in a lot of instances, as we said at the very start of the conversation, they're getting spammed out there to people that are unaware that there's two different models. They just think they're getting a 9060 XT or a 5060 Ti, whatever it was for previous generations. So again, there's so many ways to gain those stats and say, but look how popular they are. We sold some 16GB models to the people who actually do research and know what they're talking about, but then we sold a boatload of 8GB models to all the normies who just heard that this GeForce GPU was the one to buy, so they bought it in one of the pre-built systems, and that's what they ended up with. So again, it's just a really bad argument
And it creates a really bad feedback loop for the companies as well, because they're essentially saying, the numbers are saying people are buying 8 gig cards, therefore next generation 8 gig super popular, let's make more 8 gig cards, and it just goes round and round and round. If their only options are ever 8 gigabytes, then they're always going to sell, they're always going to get the feedback that 8 gig is fine, around we go again. And so then where does the improvement come from? If we're not looking outside of that and going, okay, well, what's the actual reason why gamers are accepting those things? It's all the things you've just said. It'll take that for that sort of thing to change. We can't just be sitting here and it's such a shallow analysis to go, yes, okay, 8 gig is popular, therefore make more 8 gigabyte cards, which is what they say. That this comment from Frank is effectively just justifying it by saying 8 gigabytes is fine for gamers at the low end because people have bought tons of 8 gig cards because they play, esports games. Yeah, like, would esports games be using more than 8 gigabytes of VRAM by now if entry-level GPUs had more than 8 gigabytes of VRAM? That's another thing, because of course esports games target the masses on purpose. They're designed specifically to run as broad a hardware target as they possibly can, and so a game like Valorant or Overwatch or whatever can't mandate 16 gig because that cuts out 90% of PC gamers.
Yeah, and the people who say that wouldn't be the case, well, they don't run on 2 gigabyte cards. They really struggle on 3 gigabyte cards these days. I haven't done a 1060 revisit for a while, but last time I did, there was a lot of those games that were really hard to get running on those cards. So if 16 gigabytes had been mainstream for at least 2 generations now, yeah, the games would probably be better. But anyway, it's just, we would like better graphics cards at better prices, or the prices we're seeing now, just with more VRAM, because again, VRAM's not super expensive. It's something they can absolutely do. They just don't want to because they're getting away not doing it.
Yeah, I think to close this discussion out, I just think that making this comment was unnecessary. Like, they're not fooling anyone by making these statements and saying, like, they're not convincing gamers that they've done a good job here. We all know what's going on, and if the answer that you can provide is either wrong or dodgy,
just don't say anything.
Did having all the AI on the main show floor mean that the peripheral spaces were more interesting? Yeah, AI at Computex this year has been kind of interesting, and I don't mean that from the AI stuff was interesting. What I mean was, last year when we came to Computex, there was a lot of AI stuff. Every company was trying to shove AI garbage down the throats of gamers. This year, it looks like companies are trying to make a bit more of a concerted effort to not make ridiculous, laughable AI products. And so a lot of the times that we've gone to see even some of the booths, but also the suites and stuff, there's just products that do not have AI mentioned because they aren't AI products and should never have had AI mentioned to begin with.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of jokes made about how silly the AI stuff was last year at Computex. Obviously there's still heaps of AI related stuff, but in our space, it didn't really come across it much when looking at graphics cards, cases, which sounds like they're the kind of products when you're looking at them you wouldn't be hearing about AI, but that was not the case last year. We were hearing about AI coolers, AI SSDs, AI motherboards, everything. I don't think there was anything that was safe from the AI last year, but yeah, this year not much of that at all. Of course, everywhere you look there's like AI computing, AI next, there's all these AI things everywhere, but yeah, not with the products we were looking at. Yeah,
definitely some companies have leveled up their booths based on their AI influx of cash. Some of the large server and workstation manufacturers, especially people that do individual components that go into servers, they've got massive, much more impressive booths this year. You can tell that they've gotten a huge cash influx. But yeah, it's been good. Like, obviously there are still consumer products with AI parts to it. Like Gigabyte is still making AI top as one of they're making AI top products. MSI's got AI in monitors and that sort of thing. So there's still that, but it feels like they're not trying to go ham on the gaming side of things. They're not trying to convince gamers that you need an AI graphics card, for example. Or what even would an AI graphics card be? They kind of struggled with that last year. They kind of made up some BS to try and convince people, or don't think it worked.
You ran into some, sorry to interrupt, you ran into some AI monitor stuff though.
There was some AI, well, I don't even think it's real AI, but they've just listed it as AI, like presence detection sort of thing, which is just, classic algorithms that have been used for ages. So whether or not that counts as AI, I'm not sure. I'm not an expert. I wouldn't say so. But even that wasn't like huge AI display. Like, look at our new AI monitor. I think last year at Computex, there was the monitor side. There was much more focus on like, this is the AI monitor that you want for AI gaming. And now it's just like a little feature.
Yeah, there was like basically AI cheats going on.
Yeah, there was
like
AI
crosshairs
cheats
and stuff.
I think MSI had to remove or really pare that back because they got a lot of negative feedback from people being like, what are we even doing here? Like, why is there cheat features of this scale in monitors, which I totally agree with.
That was a very poor read, like not understanding gaming at all and the problems that gaming faces online.
Yeah, so whatever. Plus they'd be banned in all tournaments anyway, which is the only time that stuff matters. So yeah, well, it's just weird stuff. But yeah, it was good to see that we could walk around pretty comfortably, not have to speak to product managers asking us like, what do you think about AI, the AI in gaming? Because we got that question a lot previously. It's much more focused, which is good. And they can leave the AI stuff to the industries and areas where they cover that.
Tim, that's just what the question says. Monitor naming is garbage. What would be your ideal monitor naming scheme if you were in charge of naming a company's monitors? On that note, there were a couple of doozies. ASUS had one where you had to like the name was like as long as the card it was on. It was like the whole top of the card was the monitor name. It was absolutely absurd. And watching Tim read it out, I was just laughing so much.
I feel like it's getting worse. Like previously at some of the Computexes, I've been able to read the name, and because I see so many jumbles of letters and numbers, I can pretty quickly get what the name is, like within a couple of takes. Like I'll just read a few times, I'll be able to say the name. These days it's like I have to have the card right there and read it directly off the page. And I think another problem is that a lot of the monitors have names that are very similar. So I might have tested a product that's like XG27 AQDMG, and they'll make a new one, it's like the XG27 AQDMP or something like that. And so I'll get really confused. I'll be like, did I accidentally say the wrong one? It's a huge mess. And so, yeah, I mean, we hear from monitor manufacturers like, what is the reason? Like I ask them now these questions. I'm like, what is with this name? Why is it so long? No one's going to be able to remember this. And the product managers come over and they're like, oh yeah, but like the P means this, the G means that, the 27 means the size, the A refers to adjustable stand, the M means QD OLED or W OLED or whatever it is. I'm like, none of that needs to be in the name. Like, no one cares that the A means adjustable stand and the P means like premium gaming series or whatever. No one cares. What people care about is a memorable name that they can tell their mates, like, I bought this cool monitor, it was the whatever, and go buy one of those because it was awesome. If you're making your name 10 letters and numbers, first of all, how do you, like, let's say you watched our Computex coverage and we've read off a name that's super long and pointless. How are you then supposed to remember that that's a cool product to keep an eye out on? How are you supposed to remember to then search for that product at a retailer? Because that's going to be nearly impossible. You just won't remember it. How are you going to tell your mates that you bought a cool monitor? You'd just be like, oh yeah, I just bought that Asus ROG something or other. It was like I think it was an OLED. And then you go look at, Asus's product page and they've got like 20 OLEDs. So it's like, which one was your mate referring to? And then you'd be like, oh, I think it was like the PG something. And you'd be like, okay, that doesn't really narrow it down. So there's that. I think this can be simplified in two ways. Firstly, companies make too many monitors. So maybe cut down your product lines a little bit. We don't really need to see 50 different options. Some of the models are very, very similar. So just make the better of the two versions or whatever. And on top of that, I think it needs to be fewer letters and numbers and more cool names. So, let's just go with like birds as an example. Like you could have a falcon monitor, a hawk monitor, an eagle monitor in your line, and that would make it much more easy to know what sort of product you were getting. And yeah, you could add a couple of letters and numbers on the end, like Gigabyte's done like M27U previously. That's a great name. It's 2 letters, 2 numbers, easy to remember. If you were making like, let's say you had your 2025 series, that was the Falcon series. Then the 2026, it was the Eagle or whatever, and you just kept rotating through birds or something. That's just an example, it could be anything, right? I think people would be much more easily be able to remember, oh yeah, I bought the Falcon M27U. I bought the Eagle M27U.
Yeah, it's like they had internal code names
Yeah.
for their products. Like, okay, so what are we going to make the actual product name? Like, just use the code. It's like a serial number, and that's the model name. Some of them are, yeah, absolutely absurd that we saw.
So it's not getting better, unfortunately. I mean, I guess with all the different OLED formats and stuff, they're trying to, you know, keep them all within the same product family, but then have slight variations. It just makes it far too hard for people to understand what the product is. And honestly, I would, if I was like ASUS or MSI, like ASUS has got ROG Swift, ROG Strix, MSI's got like MEG, MAG, MPG. I would cut that out because they're supposed to mean things like this is the premium gaming, mid-tier gaming, lower tier gaming. That is determined by the price. People will very quickly realize if this is a premium or lower tier monitor purely based on the price. You don't need those product terms. What you do need is to distinguish upon the more important features of the monitor, like maybe the refresh rate, the size, the type of panel it is, and that can be done through cooler things like, again, like Eagle, or I mean, Gigabyte's got Eagle for graphics cards and things like that, but you know what I mean? Instead of it being like Asus ROG Swift PG something, you'd make it the Asus Eagle M27U, and that's the monitor. But again, like, I'm sure they'd be like, no, we can't get rid of ROG branding or whatever, you know, we've established this for so long. It's like, okay, sure.
Well, the ROG was still the least of the concerns with some of those names. Like,
yeah, sure.
There was some doozies.
I was just thinking, if you're going to simplify it, try and make it. I think that the test should be the product managers should go out onto the street. Very simple test. Say the product name to someone, then ask them 10 minutes later to recall the name. And you only get one chance to tell them, and if they can't recall it, it's a bad name.
How about 30 seconds?
30 seconds, yeah.
If you hit someone with a string of letters and numbers,
yeah,
and then like repeat that back to me, they'll be like, they'll get like the first three, and it's a mess.
Yeah, so that's an easy test. Implement that test, and I think you'd come up with much better product names. And I want to be very clear, I'm not advocating for multiple products to have the same name. I don't like it when a company, Samsung does this, for example, there's like the OLED G8, and then there's like 5 different models, and there's different, they use that name across different years and that sort of thing. I think it's okay if it was like OLED G8, 27-inch model, 32-inch model, 34-inch model, that's fine. But if it's, you're getting to different years and you have to be like, oh, the OLED G8, oh, but which one? Was that the 24 model, the 2025 model? That's a bit confusing. So optimize that as well. But I'm sure there's people are paid, there's marketing people at these companies that are paid lots of money. So apparently that's their job, go do it.
Finally, a big thank you to G.Skill and Trikes for helping to make our Computex trip possible this year. G.Skill offers an amazing range of DDR5 memory with AMD Expo support, allowing you to get the most out of your Ryzen processor, and we've been using their Trident Z5 Neo memory in our test systems for years now, as we rely on it to get the best results. We've also started using Trikes coolers, and I've got to say the Panorama SE 360 Black is one of the best looking AIOs I've ever seen. The quality of the rotatable display is incredible, and as complex as the design appears, it's remarkably quick and easy to install. So for more information, please check the links in the video description.
All right, and I guess that wraps us up for part 2 of this Q&A series. I think we've still got quite a few questions that we want to get to, some really interesting ones talking about the industry and the things we've seen at the show. So we'll probably, as usual, publish a part 3 on the channel soon. So stay tuned for that one. Obviously part 1 as well, go back and watch that.
I want more drinks as well. Yeah,
some more drinks would be nice. We'll get Balin on that. Balin, go get us. Anyway, what else? We've got our Patreon page if you're interested. You want to sign up, support the channel, the independent coverage that we do here. You gain access to some pretty cool benefits. We've got our monthly live stream, which we'll probably have to do at some point because we're not really set up for live streaming here in Taiwan. Didn't really think about that, so we'll figure that out. We've got BTS content, Discord community, great place to chat about all the things that have been happening. Is that all really? I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And we're also shouting Balin some drinks, so don't think Balin's just sitting there watching us drink. We're getting him some lovely beverages as well.
Your Patreon money is funding Balin's drinks while he edits these videos and helps us out with filming.
Members' Patreon. Anyway, we'll wrap this one up. Yeah, thanks for watching. I'm your host, Steve.
I'm your host, Tim. See you in the next one.